How's it going, guys? May 30th, 5:07 p.m. I'm gonna get a couple vlogs done before I take my dog to his training appointment. Still training him to be a service dog. Roughly takes about a year, and we're only a couple months into it. But I do have to go every Tuesday. Today is Tuesday, so I did want to talk about this vlog will be entitled "New versus Old Ideals and Thoughts and Ways." I guess you could wrap up into there. But I was talking to, as I mentioned in the previous log, I was talking to a lady about, the business she does and what she's trying to correlate to today's youth, to today's people in general, in the sense of eagerness to work and work hard for the things that you've accomplished. And we come to a consensus, me and her, whenever we were talking, that it's today's a fast, ever changing world. You have to be able to adapt with the times, and those mentalities, those thoughts of hers, not that they're necessarily dated, but they kind of are in a way. Today's youth is used to more things happening rapidly, and if they don't happen rapidly, what I was telling her, just on my experience with mentoring some of today's youth, is that if things don't happen rapidly in their favor, they tend to be discouraged by that rather than working harder towards that end objective. They'll be discouraged and change objectives, change goals rather than change the way that they approach the situation. So rather than try harder, they will accept defeat and move on to another objective or goal. And this is a lot of different things, and there's a lot of different things that go into this. So let's say I've harped on this before, but social media again is, as you scroll through things, why do you think you're scrolling through things? The valuable information that you find, like when I talk to people, like why do they have Facebook? Why do they have Instagram? Why do they have these things? And a majority of the responses that I get are to keep up with family and children that aren't necessarily within arm's reach. So I get that. I got that. What's more personable than social media is a phone call. Seeing somebody in person would obviously be the best form of being personable, but also a phone call would be better than just seeing things on social media. Because let me paint for you an example. Let's say you do see the growth of a child or nephew or loved one on social media, and you haven't reached out to this child for a while. And do they know that you're looking at that? Do they know how you feel about it? Would a simple phone call be able to have some sort of effect on them, that just by you looking, they don't know that you look, and you can't express your feeling or emotion or gratitude for, let's say, a graduation or some milestone that they accomplished in their life. They don't know that you had appreciation for that. And if you share it through social media with their parents or with them, to me, it's not as explicit as a phone call. Hearing the voice of somebody who cares about you will have a much longer lasting effect than some words that were just typed out. Although they may have the same meaning, I believe the effect is different. But that's the world we live in today, where social media is constantly accepted as a form of social interaction. And in regards to social interaction, it is just depleted over the last couple of years as social media has picked up. So talking to this lady, these old ideas, these old ideologies of wanting people to do things, it's just has changed today because people have changed, and it's not necessarily because of social media, but that's one of the reasons that people have changed. They're just looking for things to happen right now, and if they're not finding it, they're moving on to the next thing. They're not necessarily owning up to their failures, and a lot of people today, a lot of people in general, and this has been going on for decades, eons, since mankind has begun, is they're afraid to fail. And to me, failure is only a learning experience. You're gonna fail at something in order to be great at it, to be good at it even. You don't just wake up and become a mathematician overnight. It takes practice and inclination and willingness to learn that. You don't just become good at something by waking up at it. Yes, there's some people who are genetically better at doing, let's say, sports, and some people who are have higher IQs, and enables them to learn a little bit easier. But if you have done any fair share of research, and people And there's a famous story about this couple who raised a world champion chess player. And they were just your average couple who didn't have no special IQs, and neither did their children. But they taught their children at a young age how to play chess, introduced chess pieces from the time that they could hold objects. I'm talking about infantile ages, less than a year old. They introduced these pieces and then slowly teach them how to play chess. And these kids were beating grown grandmaster chess players at a kid's age because of the passion that they had for it, the intellect that they had for it. And their whole series was that you can teach genius. You can teach that. You're not necessarily born with it, and a lot of people have that misconception that you have to be born a genius in order to be a genius. No, you can teach that. You can learn it. And that's something that's being misconstrued every day. And rather than settle for the easy defeat and moving on to the next thing, why not challenge yourself into something that really hurts, that takes time, that you can build upon? Why not become a great at something, a professional at it, and the best version of that person that you can be, rather than accept the defeat and move on to something else? That's the easy way out, and a lot of people take that. And sometimes it is justified. I will admit, sometimes things just aren't for you. I've never been good at art, and I have tried. I've tried for quite some time. I just don't find it fascinating. I don't have the heart for it. So I myself have tried, and I've even been, when I tried, I was awarded a prize. And that's how I knew that this is possible. That's how I knew that what I'm telling you is real. It's because I've experienced it. Although that I know art isn't for me. When I did try, I received an award, and it was with the help of other people that I was able to get that award, because I couldn't necessarily do it on my own, but I took what they gave me and ran with it and created my own version of it, which enabled me to receive an award at a very young age. I'm talking about, I was still in Miami, so this had to have been probably elementary school age, maybe middle school, but I'm pretty sure it was elementary school age. Knowing that even at that age that I just didn't like art, and I had no passion in this, but I know when I tried, and tried hard, that I was able to actually, I think I have the piece here. I keep it as a constant reminder, and I'll show you. I'll show it to you guys so you guys can understand the realness of this. So this is the piece, and I do keep it here closely so you guys can see it. It's a spider, right? It's a spider, and it's on a piece of clay. And a lot of people, even my own family, doesn't know the story behind that. Sorry guys, but I had to put it back. But a lot of people don't understand the story behind that simple spider that I have there. And I share with you these things so you guys can understand and comprehend the realness that I put into these vlogs when I make them. And that I'm not just blowing hot air. But that piece that I just showed you was a piece that I created, and I think I just realized that it was dated at the bottom in 5th grade, or in 4th grade. I couldn't see it, but it was in 5th or 4th grade where I created that piece, and I got an award for it. It was 3rd place. It wasn't even 2nd or 1st, but for me to get an award, I was very happy by that. And I created that piece, and that just showed me that if I tried hard at something, even if I wasn't good at it, wasn't born to do it, that I'd be able to do it. And that has given me so much encouragement in the future that I know that when I try hard at something, that it is accomplishable. I may not do it to the best of everybody's ability when graded on a grandier scale, like I got 3rd place, but to even place, for me, having that unwillingness for it, meant a lot to me, and that has resonated with me for years and years. But I have that picture and have had it since then, and it has survived because it's so important to me to realize that it is the only piece of art that I have ever placed, and that is to remind me of absolutely trying my hardest and putting my work and effort into that. I remember, now as I reflect back on it, I remember me working up until the point that they told me I couldn't work on it anymore, and that they were taking it from me to be able to glaze it and put it into this room, because you take the clay, you form the clay, and it goes through this process where the clay hardens. And I remember working up onto it for several weeks prior to that to be able to get it to where it needed to be, and that has grown with me till today. So the message in this video, the old ideals versus new ideals, is that is something that has been lost in translation. And that we both agreed upon that kids don't necessarily work as hard as they used to. And this is where me and her differed a little bit. I said kids are taught more. If you look at your children's educational level compared to yours, they will be smarter than you when they graduate high school. And every year, their kids will be smarter than them when they graduate high school. Just the high school level. Obviously, if you take the college into perspective and somebody didn't go to college, you just have that much more education. So that doesn't level the playing field. For me, the level playing field is high school. But if you look at the kids who graduate high school, and this may differ by opinion, but my opinion is that they get smarter every year after that. That standards are constantly increased to a point to where they have to move forward and succeed. The average reading level when I was in school was at an 8th grade level, and I still believe that it's at that, but it's slowly increasing to a 9th grade level and 10th grade level. But that was the educational level. The years after that, some people that completed high school, and my parents and the generations before me didn't complete high school, and some didn't have an educational inclination to complete high school, so most newspapers were published at an 8th grade level. I don't know what they're published at today. I don't have that information, but I found that fascinating that I was in 9th grade and I was being taught these things, that the average newspaper was published at an 8th grade reading level so people can comprehend the simple things that are being put in there, because if you publish them at a collegiate level, there'd be a lot fewer people reading them. So they published them at an 8th grade reading level for people to be able to read and understand what they're reading. So, but as time progresses, your children will be smarter than you at the high school level. When they graduate high school, they're going to know a lot more than you. And if you've ever seen that show, Are You Smarter Than a 5th Grader? That to me is a shining example. Even though you may have been taught those things, you may have been taught those things before 5th grade, or after 5th grade. So you may have learned those things at 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, but now they're teaching them at the 5th grade level, which to me is pretty outstanding. And it's pretty terrific that they're doing that, increasing the standards, because I think that's the logical way of doing things. But when you try to take old ideals and compare hard work, that has been substituted with, in my opinion, education in a way. So people are expecting to do more in education and receive more education, like a bachelor's degree is a new high school diploma, believe it or not. So when you're expected to have those things, education is more of a stronghold than hard work would ever will be. Although they tend to go hand in hand, the hard work that comes from education is very difficult than the hard work that comes from hard labor. As some of our parents and grandparents, unfortunately or fortunately, however you look at it, may have done in the past. So trying to correlate these different ideals to the older generation and trying to fill that gap is quite difficult. I understand the generational gap, and I'm trying to fill it as best as I can. But the only way I can do that is by informing both sides. That you can't just give up when the going gets tough, because that's when things start to pay off. And as I just showed you with that art project and my own presence and how that affected my life, when I actually tried to do something, I know that that's required in order to be successful at something. You must work hard at it. And by working hard doesn't necessarily mean manual labor, but it may mean putting forth more of an effort that you typically don't do to things that come easier. Like I've always been good at math, so it came easy to me. I didn't have to put that much work into it. But for English and art and geography and history, all of those subjects were super difficult for me, so I had to put in more time to learn it and do well at those things. But that's a shining example of the generational gap that exists today. Is that I was born in an era that I would like to think when that gap started to change. And I'm growing up with millennials, although they're younger than me. I'm growing up with them and being able to see their ideologies and their patterns into educational and what they think about hard work versus work in general, or do they consider just work hard as well? Um, so trying to understand those things, trying to fill in those gaps is very challenging at times. But also, the older generation has to realize that times have changed, and you must be able to adapt to move on to those changing times. If not, you will just fall behind and fall at the wayside. Um, as much as you may not like it and as much as you may disagree with it, it's the majority that rules in a democracy. So um, you have to understand that the kids are the future and do your best at raising them to your ideals. And sometimes those ideals will get lost in transition along the way if you didn't pass it on as good as you thought you did. The other thing was I talked to another lady who graduated with a business and marketing and management degree in 1984, and she asked me what I was going to school for, and I told her marketing and management. And as I got talking to her daughter and her about some different strategies for marketing and management and managing their business, it was just kind of new ideas. So they asked me things, although she said that the stuff that I would learn today would be similar to the stuff she learned back in 1984. And I had to disagree with her because I don't agree with that. Obviously, if the education was the same, the marketing job market would be the same, and it's not. It's thriving. It's increasing. And if management would be the same, then there'd be no change in management over the histories of past years. But there has been. There's been new introduction to management systems, how to manage people, and systems, which didn't really exist in 1984. Management systems, if you think about it. So a lot of things have changed, both retrospectively and actively, in the management and marketing field. But talking to her about some ideas that I had for business, marketing, and management, and I tend to talk to other people as well when I go into different establishments, like why they do things or why they don't do things. And it's not like a sense of entitlement that I have that I can do that, but I just like to get the gist of why they do that or why they don't do that, to see what works for them and what doesn't. But I was talking to a girl who was thinking about shutting her coffee shop down, and I told her that I ran a virtual coffee shop in one of my business management classes, and how I learned about buying the product, running the staff, hiring, firing people, to be able to get the net profit, which is essentially your bottom line, higher than your classmates. But there was a lot of other things in there, like getting the most bang for your buck whenever it came to marketing. All these different decisions. Needless to say, I graduated first in my class with that, and it was out of, I don't know, a couple hundred people. But I graduated first because of the decisions I made, and most of them were logical to me. Illogical decisions stick out to me. But telling her some things that might work, some things that don't necessarily work, and she was a little distraught by some competition that had opened up nearby, and I told her to use that to her advantage. Although the competition may be cheaper, the product quality isn't as good, and they would have to crank out almost twice as much in sales to reach her same sales. If they're selling a product for $3 and she's selling a product for $5, how much does each person have to sell to make, let's say, $100 on a given day? For $5, you'd have to sell 20 cups, and for $3, you'd have to sell 33 cups. So there's a difference in labor there that some people don't see, that they don't take into consideration, and there's a lot of other factors of formula. That's just to give you a general rundown of some things to consider and not be distraught by competition. On the contrary, use it to your advantage. Figure out ways you can improve your business and build off what they're lacking. And that's where most entrepreneurs thrive, is building off where there's a gap in something, a service or a need that they see that needs to be filled. And if you can ever offer a different quality product at a higher price, sometimes people are willing to pay it just because it tastes better or feels better or is better for them. So don't necessarily be distraught by the cheaper. I told her what was her competition was the Walmart, was the generic brand, and she was more of like an upscale, like a Publix or a Target or something of that nature, where it's just more slightly more on scale, same product, but different, a little bit better for you. Or maybe like a organic version, which people are up in arms about. That everybody wants to embrace the organic type of healthy movement, which I encourage them to. If the food is better for you, then why not? But a lot of good things to come out of this. A lot of different things. In a general sense, it's the old thoughts versus new thoughts. How the older generation seems to think that what they learned has been passed on, and sometimes things have changed, and things change for the better. They may not see it as for the better, but is it better for the overall community, for the overall existence of humanity? And sometimes, like I said, you may have a different opinion. Excuse me. You may think that something is worse off, but unfortunately, the majority rules, and you can try your everything in your power to try to fight as a minority, and sometimes it works out in your favor. Look at all the some of the famous people who were the minority, who fought for rights or things of that nature that they wanted so badly and so desperately that they made happen. Uh, the other thing that I want to throw in here is about movement. It just came to me. But movements, leadership, and ties into this as well. But fascinating thing is how Martin Luther King was able to get thousands of people in a day and age to the same location at the same day at the same time to for his ideals and um, his openness and what he was believing. How was he able to do that in a day and age where electronics really didn't exist? Email, it's not like you could send an email invite and have somebody RSVP back then. It's not like you can even call that amount of people to make sure that they show up. But it was a matter of believing what he believed. Um, and that's what he told a couple people, and the word spread like wildfire that this movement was happening on this day at this time, and if you want to be a part of the movement, be there. And he was able to effectively do that in a day and age where the electronic capacity was so much less than it is today. But that's just some food for thought for you guys to think about. Is how do you think he was able to put off that type of movement in a day and age? And he was a single person. Granted, he had a movement behind him, but in a day and age with electronic, he was at a huge deficit for electronics. It just, to me, ties into if your movement is strong enough and people believe in what you believe in, then you'll have no problem finding uh, people to agree with you, followers to follow you. But you have to be able to connect with them on that belief level. And that ties into all the new ways of thinking too. Is that if people aren't believing necessarily of your belief level, and this ties into why I've talked about this before, but why you're doing something, then you may lose out on a huge customer base just on that alone. If people can't resonate with your why, then they just can't follow you. They don't understand what it is you're doing and why it is you're doing it. They may understand your what you're doing, what you're offering, and how you're offering it, but if they don't understand your why, that has the biggest impact on getting something to explode or implode if you lack a why. So just some food for thought there, but I did find that interestingly when it was put to me in that perspective about Martin Luther King and him being able to have everybody show up on a particular day at a particular time with the huge technology deficit that he was at considering where we're at today. So imagine with the resources you have today, ideally, and this is where it starts to get a little tricky, you should be able to coordinate something like that on a whim, and with just a couple ideas. Hey, I'm going to be here at this day and this time. Meet me there to make this happen. So, again, I did find that astonishing for him to be able to do that, and with thousands of people nonetheless. So, again, I appreciate you guys watching. This vlog went a little long, but it's tough to talk about those old ideals versus new ideals and trying to get them to understand. Of course, I wouldn't be able to cover everything, but this just scratches the surface on that generational gap that exists. And me trying to troubleshoot that and close that gap as best as I can as an individual. So, again, I appreciate you guys watching, and I will see you on the next one.